October is Mental Health Awareness and Depression Month, one of them, May also, but October. And this October in particular marks my 2-year anniversary of what I like to refer to as my spiral, which is where I had a really incapacitating experience with my own mental health. And I post about it here in bits and pieces and, kind of explained what happened to me, but I never really sat down and got into details about every little bit of my experience. And I thought that I would do that today because I think it's valuable. I think that people in the situation that I was in that might be in that situation now could benefit from it, or could use me as a resource to give them resources, or from the things that I took away from my own experience that I could offer as advice now. And really just to kind of help in the destigmatization of mental health as a whole. I mean, it really is still so stigmatized in our society. Even myself personally had some fears going into this that were caused by the stigma that goes along with mental health and the services that come along with that. And honestly, just the ignorance of what a mental health crisis really looked like for someone. We kind of have this idea, this exaggerated idea of what it's supposed to look like because of movies and, the cinema dramatizes all of that. But we don't really, I mean, unless you've experienced it before, really truly understand the gravity of a mental health crisis and how it can affect your entire life and your well being. And I had that experience not too long ago. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that today and kind of open up the floor for those of you who might be in that kind of position to reach out. So that being said, I'd like to start off with saying that, I think anxiety, or the word anxiety, is a very overly saturated word. I think we use it for everything. If we're paranoid or worried about something, we say we have anxiety or we're anxious. And anxiety can come in all shapes and sizes, and it can look different for everybody. But true anxiety can be debilitating. It can have very physical effects on your body, and that's what I experienced out of it. But going back to my childhood, just to preface with this and just to start off, I mean, I guess I was pretty anxious as a child. I mean, I would say that I was a very precautious child, but I wouldn't say that these particular episodes stemmed that far or went that far back. I'd say that I was a pretty precautious and anxious child overall. I mean, I was very worrisome. I've always, my whole life, had a lot of trouble with compartmentalizing things. I always look at the big picture. I can't really break things down and compound them like in categories like one by one. So I tend to look at the whole thing and get overwhelmed very easily because of that. I'm still like that today. I hate it about myself, but it's just the truth. But I can't remember any particular instances where I had like panic attacks or anything like that. It was just more so I was just kind of a worrisome child. Flash forward to my 20s, I started having some issues with waking in the middle of the night and feeling disassociated. So I would feel really disconnected. You can look up something called derealization, where it feels like you're having an out-of-body experience. It feels like you are in a first-person situation where you're watching things happen, but you don't really feel connected to it. It feels like a video game experience almost. And I would have trouble thinking, like, am I awake? Am I asleep? I couldn't differentiate whether or not I was actually awake. And because of that, my heart would start racing. I would start getting worried. This is not right. Something's wrong. And I would kind of panic, but I wasn't having panic attacks yet. I was just getting myself all worked up, and then I could calm myself and, get myself back to sleep eventually, and it would pass. And the next morning I would be fine. And I started to chalk that up to just like health issues. Initially, I thought, you don't really jump to anxiety right off the bat, because for me, I was ignorant to what anxiety truly was like and how it could affect your body physically. And so I thought, like, I wouldn't be having these symptoms if it's just anxiety. That doesn't make sense to me. So it's got to be something else. So I automatically went to health issues. And I, in particular, thought it was hormones because I have always kind of had issues there in that category. And so and hormone irregularities can cause all kinds of problems with you physically, including cause anxiety. So that's what I thought it could have been. But I had a full blood panel done, a lot of appointments where they, did physicals and things like that, and I'm perfectly healthy. There was nothing wrong. So, I mean, I had a little bit of anemia, a little bit of low calcium, but overall, I was very healthy and perfectly fine. So, we could rule that out. So, flash forward to I had Oliver. I was postpartum. He was an extremely difficult baby because he had reflux really bad to the point where he had to get on prescription medication at just a few months old. His pediatrician recommended that he get on a concentrated dose of Prevacid because his reflux was so bad. So, if he was awake, he was screaming bloody murder on top of sleep deprivation to the extreme. It was like an hour and a half before he was waking again. And so I was not even getting back to sleep before I was waking up again. And remind you, this initial anxiety peaks were happening when I was waking up disassociated at night from a deep sleep. And so the sleep deprivation triggered that for me. And I had a really bad postpartum to where I was sitting in the corner and crying all the time. I mean, not literally sitting in the corner, but you know what I mean? Like, just I was always crying. I was always feeling just gloomy and off and, just not myself. And I was having a really hard time acclimating to new motherhood, which is pretty normal for postpartum. But for me, it did peak a little bit more so than what I would consider normal. So at the time, I did talk to my doctor. I decided not to get on medication. I initially did start Prozac, but I ended up weaning myself off of it very quickly out of fear of taking it. So I never even let it adjust into my system before I stopped taking it, which is stupid. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So those were my experiences with what I would call like the first initial pieces of anxiety that I can go back now and look at where it began. That at the time I didn't think was a thing. Another thing, whenever Oliver was first born, I was having what I call syncopal episodes where I would get flushy and kind of start feeling like I was going to faint and almost black out. And I thought it was my heart. And so they put a heart monitor on, and I wore it for 5 weeks where it monitored every single time I was having one of those episodes, and nothing was wrong with my heart. But again, I did not know that anxiety could make things happen to your body. So, and none of the doctors ever told me that whenever I was trying to find out what was wrong with me. No one ever said, hey, to me, it sounds like you have just anxiety and you should probably get that checked out. But nobody even gave me the idea that that might be what was going on with me. So I think I'm dying. Like, obviously, I think like my body is failing. Something's wrong. I'm not being diagnosed with something. I'm going to have some like rare disease that nobody can figure out because something's wrong. I just know something's off and something's not right with me. And that brings us to 2019. So I woke up in the middle of the night. It was October 13th to be exact. And I disconnected from reality again. I had a very a derealization episode where I felt like I was not awake. I could not convince myself if I was awake or asleep, or I felt wrong, I felt off, and I started to panic. And this time, the panic attack went so far that it caused my mouth to go numb, my eyes to twitch, my heart was racing. I started to hyperventilate. I started to dry heave. I got really upset to my stomach. I just full-blown panicked. I mean, full-blown panic attack. Could not get myself back. And from that point, my brain was hijacked. I was not myself anymore, and I couldn't get myself back. And it took a really insanely difficult journey to get myself back to good. And that's kind of what I want to share. So what I'd like to share first and foremost are the things that I experienced as a result of this anxiety, and then the treatment that I sought out and how I found the resources that I did. So the things that I was experiencing were insomnia. So I was not sleeping. I was getting like maybe an hour of sleep at night. When I was sleeping, I was having brutal nightmares to the point where I was waking, panicking, full blown panic attacks in the middle of the night, hyperventilating, flushing, mouth numb, eyes tingling, heart racing, pounding outside of my chest. I mean, I couldn't get myself to calm down. And then I would just jump out of bed and I would pace all over the house, pace, cry, pace, cry, pace, cry, because I was like, this is not right. I don't feel right. I don't feel normal. I don't feel inside my own body. I don't feel connected to anything. So that was the second thing. Derealization was insane. I felt like I was in a video game. Nothing felt real. Like looking at the clouds outside, looking at the sky, it felt like I was in an alternate reality. It didn't look real to me. It didn't feel real. I mean, I could see that things were tangible, but it was like this fog over my brain. It was like everything was wrong. Everything felt off. And I just felt like this is not my life. This is not how I feel normally. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And so that thought ruminated through my head over and over and over and over again. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is not right. So the rumination was intense. The impending doom feeling, the feeling of just constant dread. I just felt dread so intensely to the point where I was so sensitive to everything. I could not be left alone. I did not want to be alone. And not because I felt like I was going to do something or that I was going to harm myself, because I never had those thoughts, fortunately. Some people do. I did not, thankfully. In fact, it was the opposite. I feared having those thoughts so much that that thought alone was a fear for me. But I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't listen to other people have conversations. I couldn't be on my phone. I couldn't listen to music, even just normal, wholesome songs like the Beatles could be on, and I couldn't listen to it. And if somebody was having a conversation and it was outside of rainbows and butterflies and sunshine and completely 100% wholesome, I would it would just cause me to panic and just worry, like they're going to say something. They're going to say something. I was like, I almost wanted to monitor everyone's thoughts and everything that they were saying, because I was afraid that someone was going to say something that was going to set me off or make me feel more fear. And I was already so just debilitated with fear. I could not eat. I could not eat. I had a complete aversion to food. Lord knows I could use that now, but I could not eat food. I was eating like maybe 400 calories, 500 calories on a good day. So I ended up losing 35 pounds throughout this experience, because I was just, I mean, I would have smoothies from like Smoothie King, or Brenna would make me a smoothie here at the house, or I would eat like a Chick-fil-A chicken noodle soup because that was close to my job at the time. And that's all I could manage. And that was a good day if I could manage that. Let me see, what else was I experiencing? Those were the primary factors in what I was experiencing on a daily basis. Now, let me say this. I was functioning. There was a time where I did get to a point where I was no longer functioning well, but for the overall majority of this time, I was waking up, getting out of bed, trying to go through my normal routine. I did not want to drive my car, so I did stop driving for a little while, and I was having Brenna take Oliver to school, and I was, just riding with her. But I was going to work. I was a loan underwriter at the time for American Airlines Federal Credit Union. So it's a big headquarters building. It's a big business. It's like a very corporate environment. And I had an important job. And so I did have to really be at my best at work, and I couldn't be. I spent a lot of time in my office just crying, to be honest with you, just crying. Thankfully, I had a best friend at work, and Mandy, shout out to you, because she would let me sit in her office behind her file cabinet and next to her window and look out the window and like hide and cry in her office and sit in silence for like hours. And she would go to Chick-fil-A and get me chicken noodle soup and make me eat. And she even came up to work on one of her days off just to support me while I was at work, because I didn't want to be by myself. So it was support like that, and like Brenna, and I'll get to Brenna definitely, because there's no way I would have survived this without her. But it was support like that that got me through to where I could function pretty like relatively normal. other than the fact that the rumination was constant and I constantly had that feeling of not feeling right. And so I was constantly crying and upset and worried. And, you know, I could have very few thoughts outside of what I was experiencing. It did get to a point where it got bad enough that I did have to take some FMLA time. Brenna was having to bathe me, and I was going to work with her during the day and just, literally sitting in her office and watching the wall all day because I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't even look at my phone. I couldn't listen to people talk. I was just crying and looking at the wall all day. So it got pretty bad. But there was a gentleman that worked with me at the credit union. This was prior to me taking some FMLA. And I came down. I was going to the bathroom a lot that day because my stomach was really upset. It was kind of at the beginning of all of this. And he asked me if I was okay. And I told him my stomach was upset. And he asked me if it was anxiety. And I don't know if he maybe just read it all over my face or what, but something about him acknowledging it made me just vomit everything up to him and tell him everything that was happening to me. And he had had a similar experience the year before, except his was way more significant than mine. He was dealing with depression in addition, and he almost lost his life. And he sought help, saw a psychiatrist, and he really just reassured me that I was going to be okay, that I was going to get out of it, that if he was able to get out of it, for sure I was going to be able to get out of it, and helped me find some resources and told me, like, you're a garden variety. This is something that so many people deal with on a daily basis. There's nothing abnormal about what's happening to you, and this is treatable, and you just need to go and get treated. And that sparked something in me. My mom had already been telling me to take medication, but my mom is an RN, and she always pushes the medication aspect of everything. She's very all about the pharmaceuticals. If it helps, then take it. That's her mindset, and I'm for that. I'm not crunchy by any means. I'm not like, oh, let's be one with the earth, and I don't want to put anything into my temple. I am not like that at all. But I am very cautious about what I take because I don't like to feel outside of my sober state of mind because it does cause me to feel upset. So I don't like to take things that make me drowsy, things that speed my heart rate up, things that I'm not sure or how they're going to make me feel that could have adverse side effects. So I'm very cautious about what I take. I'll take Tylenol, ibuprofen, things like that, but I don't take a lot of things because I'm not sure how they're going to make me feel. So I was very scared to take an SSRI or medication for this. And so I put that off and put that off and put that off because I was like, I'm going to get out of this. Eventually I'm going to feel better. And I just wasn't. I wasn't feeling better. This started October, and in between October and when I did start taking the medication, it was like an entire month had gone by. And I sought help from multiple health facilities. I made several doctor's appointments, and each one wanted to prescribe me medication right off the bat, obviously. One of them told me to check into a mental health facility, which traumatized me and caused me to like just panic even more because she was like, you need to go check yourself into this facility, and handed me a brochure to a mental health center. And you hear stories about those places being traumatizing. And, I was already thinking that I was going crazy and that I was going to end up in a straitjacket. So for a physician to hand me a brochure and say, go check yourself in here, it was terrifying. I also sought therapy. So I'd read a lot of things about cognitive behavioral therapy and how it can help with anxiety. So I was looking for someone who specialized in CBT, and I did see several therapists in the interim before I started taking medication and tried to make appointments. But to be honest with you, by the time I was where I was at mentally, the tactics that they were teaching were not going to help me because I was too far gone. I was in a mental health crisis, and I needed to have those things implemented and in place prior to getting to where I was. So by the time I was where I was, there was nothing that was going to help me as far as like meditation, grounding yourself, lavender, things like that. Those things were just, if anything, making me feel like I was more aware of the fact that it was not right, that I was not feeling okay, that I was not well, that things were off or wrong. And so I I was leaving each time feeling completely defeated and feeling like I am going to go crazy. I am never going to get my life back. I'm never going to feel normal again. Um, my life is over, is what I felt. I felt helpless. I felt awful. I did not want to come home. I hated being here because being here reminded me of not being right and not feeling like myself and not feeling like I was at my home where I'm happy and comfortable. I mean, you can see my house is adorable. It's like a Pinterest board threw up in here. I worked really hard to create this environment that is cozy and warm and cute, and I love being here. But during this time, I would wanted to be anywhere else in the world than here because it just I thought I was going to have to sell our house because I was like, I'm never going to be able to be in this house and not be reminded of the fact that I have this experience and that's going to cause me to spiral all over again, thinking about feeling this way. I was like, every time I go into the bathroom, I'm going to remember having panic attacks, or every time I wake up at night, I'm going to remember feeling this way. So I hated being at home. Um, but anyway, so finally, I got desperate enough to seek medication because Brenna was doing a lot of research for me in the background because I could not do it myself. When people are struggling, they go to forums to talk about it. It's very rare that someone with a good experience goes to a forum and posts about their good experience. So there was a lot of negative things on there about the medication and about the situation that I was in, and so I couldn't go to these forums myself, but Brenna would. She used Reddit as a really good resource, and she reached out and actually found a ton of people that were in the same situation that I was in, and or someone who had been through that situation before, or someone whose significant other had gone through that situation before, and she found help. And so we ended up making a psychiatrist appointment. And they don't tell you how hard it is to find help when you are in a mental health crisis, because your options are find a psychiatrist and pay a ton of money and be on a wait list, or go to a mental health facility or check yourself into the hospital. Those are essentially your options because you can go to your doctor and get a prescription for an SSRI and they'll write it for you, but they're not trained to really diagnose your behavior or to really put you on the proper medication or really know what you need to stabilize you. And so they're quick to just write whatever SSRI is, most used or most known. And my OB, bless her, she's like the sweetest person on the face of the earth. And after leaving her office was the first time I ate in 2 weeks because she made me feel so good. So I love her to death. But she tried to write me 10 milligrams of 20 milligrams of Lexapro right off the bat. Turns out I can only take 5 because the way my body metabolizes it. Had I taken 20, that would have been an awful experience. So those kinds of physicians are not versed in these medications, and therefore they're not the best option. A psychiatrist is your best option, and they're so expensive. We spent thousands of dollars going to the psychiatrist, and I had to wait for several weeks to get in to be seen, even though it was an emergency, because everybody was in a state of emergency, I guess. But she was fantastic. Once I got in, she diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder, which is a prolonged period of anxiety for a long period of time without it resolving itself. And it's anxiety on a monumental level where it starts physically affecting you. And she put me on Lexapro. We did a genetic testing where it showed that I metabolize SSRIs very slowly. Therefore, 10 milligrams is a therapeutic dose for most. 5 milligrams is my therapeutic dose, so that's what I currently take and what I have been taking since 2019. It took me about 8 weeks to stabilize on the medication, so it was a very slow baby steps in the right direction. I definitely had bad days in the middle of good days. It was not like a consistent progression forward. It was like I'd have 3 good days and then 5 terrible days and then 3 good days and 1 bad day, and it was not a linear movement forward, but eventually it got to the point where I was feeling better every day, where I could eat a meal, or I drove my car, or I did something that I wasn't doing before that would let me know, okay, you are making some progress. And even if I didn't see it, Brenna definitely would see it, and she would point it out and say, hey, look at you. Like, you were not doing this a week ago. This is a big deal. And then at one point, I just remember I wanted to sleep in, and that meant I was going to have to be alone that morning. And first of all, I was not sleeping in, much less sleeping in. So that right there was a huge deal. And I slept in, and I woke up alone, and I got myself dressed, and I left the house. And that's how I knew, like, that was the day. I was like, I'm better. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be normal again. And yeah, I I got my life back. I started to feel myself again. And then one day I just felt my best self, like with an insane amount of appreciation for my life and for my health and for my mental well being and for making it out of such a traumatic experience on the other side. Um, it just really made me want to be a better person, to be honest with you. Um, I I really struggled, um, and it caused me to really want to be in the here and now. I ended up leaving my corporate position because it was just mentally draining on me. I was so burnt out, in particular with the schedule and the commute. My son goes to his dad's every weekend, and he has school during the time. This was pre-pandemic, and so I was getting home almost 8 o'clock, and that's when he goes to bed. And so I was missing out on time with my son. I was commuting over an hour one way each day, and I was exhausted. I didn't want to do it anymore. There were a bunch of little factors that probably led up to the fact that I did have this break, but there was not one in particular circumstance that I could pinpoint that says this is why this happened to you. It was a bunch of little things, and I think it was just I wasn't taking care of my mental health because I was ignorant to the fact that it was my mental health and that it was anxiety and it wasn't something else medical. I ruled all that out with the blood work and all of that. So it wasn't. It was just the fact that I wasn't taking care of myself, and it put me in this position. And I was very surprised to find out how often this truly happens to people, because it does. It is so common, and it's not talked about. It's like almost every other person that I was coming into contact with talking about my experience had had a similar experience before, or a worse experience even. I mean, there were people, I posted a little bit about it when I was going through it, kind of seeking out some help from, people saying, like, I feel off, I'm having some anxiety. Anybody have any tips or suggestions? And I mean, people were flooding me with like stories of their own experiences with this. And I just didn't understand how common it was and why no one talks about it. I guess because it's vulnerable and it's easily judged, especially me being a mom. I'm a caretaker of a whole human being. So I guess it's like you have to be your best self. You can't be out of your mind. You can't be having this mental health crisis when you're taking care of a human being. So I guess people can judge it when they don't understand it. But it needs to be talked about, because I feel like the more it's talked about and the more common it is, then the more resources we can get and the more help that will be out there, because right now it's really hard to find someone to help you when you're in the midst of this. So that's kind of why I'm putting it out here. I just, for me to be a resource to somebody who needs it, or to just kind of put it out there to destigmatize and say, hey, I'm a normal person. I have a child. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a hard worker, but I had a mental break and I made it out on the other side, but I took medication to do it. And that's normal and that's okay. And it doesn't mean I'm any less. And it doesn't mean that I am, broken or incapable because I have this mental health diagnosis now. I went into therapy also, in addition to the medication. I see a psychologist instead of a licensed counselor, which, I don't have anything against the licensed counselors, but I felt like my psychologist really knows the brain and the operational aspects of anxiety and how it operates in your brain. And she really has been able to direct me to help me to overcome and maintain the physical manifestation of anxiety. I did start doing cognitive behavioral therapy with her, which has helped me significantly, which is basically redirecting your brain in moments of anxiety. So if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm starting to panic, I will start talking out loud and making like a vase arrangement in my head, or I will start one thing I just made up, and I don't know why this is the case. That was what I chose to do, but it just works. I'll do the military alphabet: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, and I will say it in many different ways. And sometimes I'll spell the word alpha with the military alphabet. So Alpha, Lima, Papa, Hotel, Alpha. And then I'll go down and it just causes your brain to focus on something else. And it's really hard when you're in the peak of your anxiety, but after a while, it really calms you down. Or I'll wake up Brenna and I'll have her rub my back and tell me what to spell. So she'll say, spell plant, and I'll Papa, Lima, Alpha, and I'll spell plant until I can calm and get myself back to sleep. And there's only been a few instances since I got stabilized on the medication that's happened. I haven't had a full blown panic attack since then. I haven't had anything close to the experience that I had then. I will take the medication indefinitely if it means it's for my mental health and well being. I do intend to try to maybe wean in the future, but who knows? I'm not going to do that anytime soon with having a new baby coming and a whole life change. I don't have any qualms now, even though I was fearful of taking it initially and I did have a few side effects getting adjusted to the medication. I have no fears taking it now, and I would take it for as long as it's necessary to keep me stable and in a good headspace. Someone told me, like, if you're a diabetic, you take insulin. And if you have a headache, you take a Motrin. And if there's things when you malfunction that you take medication to help you, and taking an SSRI is no different. You're somewhere your brain wires crisscrossed, and this helps. And putting it into that perspective really helped me. Like, you're right. I wouldn't deny myself any other medication if something was malfunctioning. So why am I so afraid to take this? But anyway, so I'm good now. I still go to my therapy every 2 weeks. I see my psychologist every 2 weeks, my psychiatrist every 6 months now, just for refills. And just to, hey, are you still good? Yeah, okay, refill you for 90 days, and and then we go from there. So every 6 months. But I do want to give a shout out to Brenna, because I could not have made it out of this without her. She was so unbelievably patient with me. She's the most patient human being I've ever met in my entire life. I would literally just stare at her and cry and panic and tell her to tell me that I was going to be okay every 5 seconds, every day until I got better. I was just like, please tell me I'm going to be okay. Please tell me I'm not going to feel like this forever. Please don't leave me. Please, I know I'm a wreck and I'm not the same person I used to be. And please, like, help me. And she was dressing me, bathing me, forcing me to eat, looking up help, looking up resources, encouraging me every day, telling me, you're going to get better. It's going to be okay. I'm here. I'm here for you no matter what. Like, we're going to find help. And she was just reassuring me constantly and just really in my corner to help me get better. And I'm so thankful. I mean, we have my mom and my friend Mandy, and there's so many other players in there that shared their experiences with me and reassured me and helped me to get through and have better days and feel like I was going to make it to the finish line, and I did. And I couldn't have without that help, and without finding those resources and finding my psychiatrist and finding my psychologist and figuring out how to cope and how to live with and coexist with this anxiety. It's never going to go away. I'm going to have this my whole life. And who knows, I might have another experience like the one I had. But I have tools in my toolbox that I didn't have before. And I have an understanding that I didn't have before. And instead of shifting the blame to, oh, it's my health, it's this, it's that, and trying to find every excuse in the book as to why I'm feeling this way, I now know why I'm feeling this way. And I can say, oh, you're anxious and you just need to calm down, and I can practice this and this and this and to get myself, or I can bump my medication or whatever I need to do. I have those things in my pocket now, and I didn't have them before. And that's what is so important when you get a mental health diagnosis like this. I also ended up being diagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder, but OCD is also a label that we slap on everything, and there's so many varieties of it, and I have one of them. And so yeah, it's been a process. It's been a learning experience. It's been something that I've had to kind of rediscover myself and how to maintain myself and how to, like, live my life and exist with this diagnosis and how that's going to look for my future. And that's what I want for anybody in this situation that I was in, is to be able to have this understanding and this um, and these resources that I now have. And I want to share that with other people so that they can feel the way that I feel about it now, where I feel secure and I feel safe and I feel um, confident that I can take it on no matter what happens in the future now, whereas I never felt that way before. So that's the main reason why I wanted to share my experience today. Um, but yeah, I just have a really, really um, monumental appreciation for my life now. Like I said, I came out of it wanting to be a better person. I will just, if you've talked to me recently or if you met me, you can probably say, like, why is this girl being so nice to me? I don't understand. And it's just because I just vowed to myself that I was going to be a nice person going forward, and that it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, I tried to send Brenna's ex a flower arrangement the other day. I don't see life in the same lens that I saw it before. It doesn't matter what you're experiencing or what you're going through. Like, I just want to be a good person and a helpful person now. And I feel like that's what I took away from this experience, that I'm additionally just so grateful for. So anyway, this video is long, so I'm going to end it now. But if you are in that situation that I was in, or you're experiencing any of those things on that list that I gave of how I was experiencing anxiety, or you know someone who is, that might be afraid to reach out, please reach out to me. Please just DM me. It's not going to be a burden. It's not going to bother me. I will gladly reassure you and talk you through it and share my resources that I have and share the understanding that I have of the things that I've learned. That's why I'm putting this out here. So if it's you, I will not judge you. I will not tell anyone. I will keep it to myself if that's what you want, but I will be here for you. So please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out if that's you. But otherwise, happy October, happy fall finally, and I hope you all have a good day.